and before that it's said to Enoch, who was the great initiate and king of Atlantis. And it said all the teachings come from Enoch.
Enoch is mentioned in the book of Genesis, where it says that Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. The biblical Enoch was then adopted by the ancient occult philosophers, who transformed him into a synthesis of various pagan gods and wise men. According to Masonic historians, Enoch was later known as Hermes to the Greeks and Mercury to the Romans. Among the Egyptians, he was called Thoth, and the Book of Thoth is said to be a collection of his wisdom. Enough cannot be said about the esoteric version of Enoch. When Dr. John Dee made contact with angelic beings, they supposedly communicated a system of magic to him based on the Book of Enoch. Today, this system is widely practiced and is known as Enochian magic. Yet it is Enoch's identity as Hermes that seems most prevalent in the mysteries.
And hence the term Hermetic. And supposedly there was this great, awesome teacher of occult lore who was known as Hermes Trismegistus, which means thrice greatest Hermes. And he produced this book that's called the Divine Poimander. And this is kind of like, if you will, a Bible of ancient occult lore.
It was Hermes who was said to be the first to discover the zodiac and invented the art of communicating knowledge to the world. More importantly, Hermes taught men the craft of building cities. In the Divine Poimander is revealed the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, as pictured by this tarot card of a magician with one hand up and the other hand down.
As above, so below, but after a different manner. And what that means is that in esoteric thought, in everything that is above is reflected down below. So for example, a human being is a certain shape and form, but the universe itself is a giant version of the human body. And that everything that is down here has a supernal, macrocosmic, if you will, origin. And that's one of the essential concepts in the occult.
As above, so below is repeatedly symbolized in esoteric art and a variety of symbols, the most basic of which is a triangle pointing upward or above. This is accompanied by a second triangle pointing downward below. When combined, they form a hexagram, commonly recognized as the Star of David, one of the most dominant symbols in the occult. Removing the base of the triangles, one can see the outline for the square and compass of Freemasonry. This next image shows what Manly Hall called the God of Reflections. He is called the Ancient One, perched over a pool of water that reflects his image. Notice also how the placement of his arms and the crown upon his head form two triangles like a Star of David, while on his chest is a Maltese cross positioned upward and then reflected again down below. Esoterics believe this same principle of reflection can be found in nature, with bodies of water providing a mirror as a picture of the Hermetic maxim. With this in mind, consider the placement of the reflecting pools in our nation's capital. Before the Washington Monument, the U.S. Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Supreme Court. As above, so below is the philosophy that guided ancient cultures into building their cities and sacred monuments in alignment with the stars. while mystical sites like Stonehenge, the pyramids, and Easter Island are all examples of this practice. Modern researchers believe that with them is the design for Washington, D.C.
As above, so below. All those individuals that were involved in any type of architecture to the ancients, that philosophy, that dictum, especially in Freemasonry, was as above, so below. What you have in the heavens should reflect, at a certain period of time, that which is on the earth. So Washington, D.C., in my opinion, has some very strong, powerful spiritual energies because of the lining up of these buildings to various stars.
These spiritual energies are referred to by Masonic author David Oveson. He writes that in the years following the American Revolution, the Masonic fraternities held ceremonial layings for government buildings. Such buildings were aligned with the stars and with the spiritual beings who ruled the stars. The debates over the design for Washington, D.C. usually begin with the designers themselves. Were these the sort of men to employ esoteric philosophy into the building of America's capital city?
There's a distinction we have to make between the street plan of Washington, D.C. and the architecture that adorns it. We know the names of the four major people that laid out the street plan and the variations that happened in those street plans. And then there are any number of architects that worked on the various buildings that went up over the years.
Nevertheless, at every major level, the influence of Freemasonry is said to have played a pivotal role. So much so that many researchers claim to see a Masonic square and compass in the street design itself.
Clearly, a lot of the designers and architects of Washington, D.C. were Masons, starting with George Washington himself, who was a high-ranking Mason and who was a leading force and a guiding force for both the location of the city and the layout of the city.
Washington's authority as the father of a new nation would set the course for America's capital city, beginning with its designer.